welcome to another installment of the Fragments of Silicon Reviews. 4 reviews up this week. The first of which is a game called Mutropolis. And no, that's not a mispronunciation or a misspelling or anything. There's a reason why it's called Mutropolis within the game, but I can't really talk about that because that's a spoiler.
Knowing nothing about it, is there any chance that it involves mutants? You don't have to answer, I guess.
Well, it's not so much mutants, but more mutation. Just not in the way you would expect. Like, less, let's say, ooze and more linguistics.
Gotcha.
Anyway, so Mutropolis is a point-and-click adventure game provided to us by Application Systems Heidelberg, who is a known publisher of adventure games of various sorts. I think the last game we covered from them was the very experimental The Longing, of which I still haven't loaded back up since last year. I just really, at the end of the day, I really don't care enough to revisit that. But Mutropolis here, this is adventure game classic. This is the kind of adventure game that you think of when you think of adventure games. If it had any like name value to its cachet. I mean, this is a fairly, this is a new adventure game that just got released a few days ago. But by that I mean it is a point-and-click adventure games, and you do the things that you would expect to do in a point-and-click adventure game. That is, you solve puzzles, primarily of the item variety, but there are more logic-based puzzles in the game as well. And these are... a lot of them are on the elaborate side. Like, the favorite tactic of this particular adventure game is to engage in the rule of three and then massively complicate the routes, especially like on the last one. Like, in Act 2, you have to gather or do 3 things to leave the area. But you got to do a whole bunch of other things in order to meet the super goals. That kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And I'm not going to lie, some of the puzzles did get a bit exhausting. I can specifically cite the, let's say, freezing puzzle, where I had to gather fucking 5 frozen items. That's a little too much.
Without them melting?
One of which you had to deal with that, like, that was just one of them. The others, you didn't have to be concerned about that. Like, and, on that particular one, they did engage in a bit of misdirection there. And that, a bit of fair warning, this game does have a bit of the adventure game problems. Not so much on the logical front. Like, the logic can be perhaps a bit esoteric, but it's not moon logic. Like, I could get where the thought processes were behind what the adventure game items did in relation to what they wanted to do, which is always a bit of a touchy subject when it comes to adventure games, because they do run the risk of being so locked into the puzzle designer's particular line of logic that you would not be able to get them without a guide.
Something cream pie yeti, something horse bridle snake, something.
Or they are being intentionally dickish. Looking at you, Douglas Adams. Like, seriously, he just flat out designed evil puzzles. The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy is still infamous for this. But also,
in fairness, it's accurately in the spirit of the universe that he created, which hates you.
Yes. He also Starship Titanic. and bureaucracy. Granted, that was a very specific point of Douglas Adams' run-ins with bureaucracy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but getting back on task here, and as far as the sussing out of the logic puzzles, that was a bit. That could get a bit more. Let you know, logically cluttered. Let's say, like, it's like a particular photo puzzle. Like, okay, I get what they were. Once I got it down, I got what they were going for, but it wasn't. It was a little too subtle. Let's just say. Like,
Do you have an inventory here, or is it just
oh yeah,
things in the same area?
oh yeah, you have an inventory.
Okay, I was wondering because that's sort of an additional layer of complexity on puzzle solving.
Yeah.
When you have the possibility of not having to deal with self-contained puzzles, but puzzles where you have to bring shit from one place to another to do stuff with it.
No, you absolutely have to do that. And that expands pretty big, going through each act. Like Act 1 is pretty simple, like really only one room, getting down to it. So you're probably going to not have too much of a problem getting through that. It's Act 2 takes place on a single, in a single location. Act 3 is where you deal with multiple places and multiple locations. By far, that's where you're going to have your most complicated stuff. Like, and in terms of adventure game frustration, it doesn't suffer from pixel hunting too much. Like I didn't have to deal with, find the one place where this particular item needed to be clicked on, but it does suffer from the missable item syndrome. That is to say, it can be easy to miss that one important thing because you didn't click on the specific thing. That tripped me up a couple of times, including one where I had to ask the developer because I legit thought that the game broke.
So that there's no highlight interactable objects or locations?
No, you can highlight them, but they don't have modern day waypoints. That is to say, they don't have a function where they can show you all of the things that are clickable.
No, that's what I meant by highlight. A mode, like a thing where like press this button if you want to make everything that you could do something with or to on the screen.
Yeah, and they don't have that, and that is a dent against this because it is the year 2021. There's no real like I have played plenty of adventure games that have this feature in it, and it's not fucking clever or real or legit challenging to have that kind of thing. That's just frustration.
How was I supposed to know I had to click on the left side of the bush to pick up the twig that I need to pick the lock in the other room?
Yeah, like I said, it's not too egregious in this one, but it happened a couple of times to me. One was definitely deliberate misdirection because they had me dealing with an item, but I didn't look at the whole thing, and it turns out it's this other item that you have to carry to the other place. Yeah, I wasn't a fan of that one. In fact, that was the specific guide the specific puzzle that made me finally crack open the guide. Anyway, in terms of its story, let's see. It's a pretty it's a unique one. It's dealing with a far-flung future where some unnamed cataclysm happened thousands of years ago, and you play as an archaeologist who is studying stuff from, let's say, the 20th, 21st century and determining, it's basically what people about 400 years from now would be doing with shit from today. And on this particular expedition, that leads to a discovery that is connected to the lost city of Mutropolis. And that also gets the ball rolling on some sinister forces who are desiring something, or perhaps the city itself, or they have a sinister motivation to approach Mutropolis, because they end up turning off the lights, knocking everyone out, kidnapping your mentor figure, Total, and nicking off with the evidence. So,
of course, don't you know anything about archaeology?
I'm like, I would not take archaeology lessons from this game.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely, not only because it's a sci-fi bent, literally thousands of years in the future, like, or was it hundreds? Well, it's the same difference.
Long enough in the future that we're the past.
Well, not just the past, but the distant past. And they're trying to recreate what we did, what society was like at this particular moment in time. And
I don't know, sounds like a bad idea to me.
I'm like, well, it's like, to give you one example, an artifact that is made out of plastic is considered to be a valuable rarity. That's kind of what we're talking about here. Anyway, and in terms of tone, like, it's a pretty, like, it's a serious game, but it's definitely very it's that particular style of British humor that's bleak, but not too bleak. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure if there's a word for it, but if you've watched a fair amount of British comedy, you'll know it when you see it. Like,
black comedy?
British.
No, black comedy is more bleak.
Yeah, it's very, it's very sardonic, like, yeah, but tongue in cheek. Like I said, it's and it's also very dry.
Yeah.
Like I said, it's kind of hard to describe if you haven't experienced it. Like, a good example would be, say, have you ever watched one of the Blackadder series?
There is a significant sliding scale of bleak in Blackadder.
I'm aware.
Goes forth is a little on the extremely fucking bleak.
Well, yeah, obviously, but I'm talking more, say, Blackadder 2.
Yeah.
Maybe
everyone's stupid. There's a lot of bad shit in the world, but be in good spirits about it, I guess.
Yeah, something like that. Like I said, it's a bit hard to chart.
Mm-hmm.
Especially since British humor. One of the endemic features of British humor is that it's a lot bleaker. It's a lot more cynical. It's a lot less concerned with optimism than American. Just not just humor, but dispositions in general.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you really don't know how optimistic American culture is until you contrast it against something else. Like, it's a big reason why a lot of British humor transplants don't really work when transposed to American comedy, because they're kind of built on different foundations. But once again, this is getting off track here. In terms of all of those constructs, they're fine. Henry is a likable and affable chap. Maybe a bit naive, but he's a likable protagonist. And the supporting cast, I suppose, that's probably where my problems lied there, because the supporting cast is definitely underdeveloped. There was one plot revelation where even the characters inside were like, really? That's never good, okay? I'm like, wait, you two are best friends? Did you two even have a scene together? Was there any indication that this was a thing?
I mean, that does sometimes happen in real life, but that's one of the ways in which fiction is supposed to be less strange than real life.
Right. It's like a certain character claims another character's their best friend, and everyone's like, what, really? And it's like, even the game is is unsure of this revelation. I'm sorry, it's less a realistic twang of actual life, and more, this was just an underdeveloped plot development. It is just never a good sign when the internal logic is fucking questioning shit. Putting a lampshade on certain things doesn't actually make it better. Okay, if you acknowledge there's a fucking problem, the actual answer is to actually introduce some fucking characterization to make this shit work. But these are minor quibbles. But anyway, in terms of figuring shit out in and all that, I'd say it's an expert puzzle adventure game. Definitely not the kind of thing you would want to do on your first outing. And also, it is a adventure game that is very much in the mold of adventure games, specifically like 90s adventure games. Not shocking at all is there's some shout outs to example, there's some LucasArts shout outs in the game that I won't spoil. So it knows where its brain and its heart is. And I think it captures that style pretty well, while also having a style all its own. It's got some weird noodle person character designs that I'm not entirely sure I like, but are definitely distinctive. In terms of music, the only music track I remember is that damn elevator music. And I think that's just because I had to go through that elevator 100,000 times. And also, not every area had music. And not all the music stood out. So, let's see. Anyway, pricing. So, this game clocks in at a robust $20, and comes bound in a couple of bundles. You've got the Lost Treasures Adventure bundle with two Nelly Kutalot games, the Tool Fantastic Protagonist bundles with Unforeseen Incidents, and the Digging the Earth bundle with The Longing. Let's see. So it comes in 3 different bundle flavors. And they're all very different adventure games. And we can actually speak to these because we have, I think, outside of one of the Nelly Kutalot games, we have, let's see, I think we reviewed The Foul Fleet, but we haven't reviewed Spoonbeaks Ahoy. But given that I know what Nelly Kutalot is, I'm going to say that the Tool Fantastic Protagonist bundle is the best option here. Nelly Kutalot is that's for beginners. That's for children. That's not necessarily the best pairing with this particular game, unless you are purchasing for your kid. The Longing, once again, we reviewed The Longing last year. This is a very experimental adventure game, maybe the most experimental we've ever crossed. This is more a contrast to what we got going on here. Whereas the Unforeseen Incidents, that's very much another traditional adventure game, much different bent and tone, but I think mechanically pairs the best here. But in terms of prices, let's see, The Lost Treasures is $37.77. That's going to be the most because it's got 2 other games in it. Tool Fantastic is $35.98, and Digging the Earth is $31.48. In terms of standalone, it's got the soundtrack and art book. I think it either comes with it or it's a free bit of DLC. So no need to worry there. Anyway, as a $20 game, that's perfectly serviceable. Especially if you don't go in with a guide. Like it is one of those adventure games where if you know what to do, you are going to blaze through it in about an hour, maybe a couple hours. But that's not really the design intent of this. And in terms of replay value, there's actually a lot of optional achievements for those who want to go for that. So it's not a pure one and done. But I wouldn't say that there's really much worth revisiting after one playthrough, at least not in the near term. Ultimately, Mutropolis is a very solid adventure game. Definitely not the favorite of what we've reviewed just this year. That's still Hero U. But this is a 7 out of 10 outing in terms of, solidness on scales of arbitration. Anyway, any other questions, comments, or concerns over Mutropolis?
I think I'm good.
Okay,
Not really, but it looks pretty neat.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Right then. So that'll about do it for Mutropolis. Be sure to tune in after the break as we will be reviewing Temmie Q.